Welcome back. Now in a moment we'll examine the development of battlefield technology. First, here are some other stories to keep an eye on. US presidential candidate Hillary Clinton says she's feeling better after announcing that she had pneumonia. In an interview with CNN, she explained her decision not to inform more than her closest aides, saying she just didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. The US has flown 2 strategic bombers capable of carrying nuclear payloads over its ally South Korea. It comes just days after the North was believed to have carried out a 5th underground nuclear test. And Colombia's FARC rebel group has apologized to the country for years of kidnappings. The group and the government recently signed an agreement to end hostilities and reunite the country. Tens of thousands of hostages were taken during a conflict that lasted more than 5 decades. So let's return to military technology. We'll move from the issues on today's battlefield to those of the future. The adoption of drone warfare has changed the field of battle forever. Now, from a control room thousands of miles away, targets can be destroyed with the push of a button. But autonomous war machines are not exclusive to the air. Land and sea devices are likely to become a mainstay on the battlefield of the future. In the US, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency are pushing the limits on technologies like self-guiding bullets, automated machine gun turrets and robots. Military contractors in the UK and in the US are leaders in unmanned and autonomous defence systems. They're in a race for dominance with others in countries like China and Russia. There, research and development into new technologies is moving quickly. Russia is thought to be heavily investing in autonomous systems, and last year the Chinese unveiled a trio of armed robots built for urban combat. And there are others. Globally, there's a growing list of countries that either have or are developing some kind of autonomous weapons system.
We are building powerful systems that cause our nation's adversaries to pause.
The US sees many benefits to these new technologies, including reduced civilian and military casualties and the ability to undertake riskier missions. But their worth in battle won't be known for some time, and their safety and reliability is far from certain. And while autonomous machines may make forces safer, their lack of conscience and human judgment are likely to raise pressing ethical questions that will linger well into the future. Well, Justin Bronk is still with us, a research fellow from the think tank, the Royal United Services Institute. We saw some of the robots which are being developed there. They have a slightly comical look about them now, but this is serious stuff. These are about automated weapons systems which will be fighting our battles for us in the future.
Yeah, I mean, what Western militaries in particular, but militaries around the world are struggling with is essentially manpower is incredibly expensive. Particularly if you have to pay someone's pension, every generation of military people who serve, you have to pay their pensions till they die, and they're quite good ones. So basically, the push towards automation is as much about allowing militaries to cope with being much smaller in terms of personnel as it is with sort of individual systems battlefield advantage. It's trying to just cope with much smaller militaries, much smaller budgets, and still do the same tasks. But of course, there's a lot of concern around arming machines which are then determining whether to use lethal force or not based on whatever parameters might be set.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if there's less human involvement, does that raise more ethical questions?
Yeah, there's always a bit of a sort of dichotomy in the sense that on the one hand, you want a human being there to exercise humanity, restraint, judgment of complex situations. But of course, human beings also make mistakes, and there have been numerous incidents which have nearly caused conflict where with aircraft colliding or people loosing off missiles when they weren't supposed to in the Cuban Missile Crisis, that sort of thing, where it would have been rather good to have a machine determining whether to fire or not, of course.
But machines are only as good as their programs. Yeah. I mean, what if they're hacked, or what if algorithms are set which can't entirely deal with the situation in front of them? What about human judgment?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, you're always going to have a human oversight at a certain level. So, for example, if you were to ask in the air environment, are you going to see autonomous aircraft capable of flying a preset mission profile and delivering weapons in a strike role, I'd say probably yes, because just the threat profile you can engage within is that much greater than with a manned aircraft, and also it's cheaper to keep those aircraft current. You don't need to keep training pilots in flying the aircraft to keep currency. On the other hand, are you going to replace the traditional fighter jet in the air superiority and air defense role, where you might have to go up alongside civilian airliners, for example, that aren't responding, and look in, can you see is the pilot waving to you? Is he slumped over the controls? Does he look scared? Does someone have a knife to his back? It's hard to see a robot aircraft doing that. And equally, a lot of what high-end military confrontations require is split-second analysis of a complicated situation and unexpected variables. So I think essentially we'll see unmanned systems alongside manned systems for many decades still, but increasingly most of the heavy lifting and potentially firepower being delivered by the unmanned component, with human beings more as a sort of controller.
If you stretch it way out in the future then, but with that analogy, you'd end up with battlefields where opposing armies, like robot armies, will be fighting each other. I mean, it could look something out of Terminator, I suppose.
Yeah, there is certainly a danger that warfare becomes too easy, as it were, and therefore also escalation becomes harder to predict and control. But as you pointed out earlier, when you get to a certain point of automation, cyber vulnerability becomes almost more important than your battlefield vulnerability. So, for example, there are American stealth surveillance drones, RQ-170s. One of them was lost to Iran a few years ago and was made to land intact in Iran. Now, it would be almost impossible for the Iranians to engage that platform kinetically because it's very, very stealthy and it's quite small. So very difficult to engage it with a missile, but evidently they were able to override the command link and the self-destruct mechanism in some way, jam it, spoof it, hack it, whatever it was, and take that aircraft out and indeed capture it that way. So, making things automated doesn't necessarily make them less vulnerable. So again, I think a mix will be around for a long time to come.
Okay, I think it's a fascinating look at what could be in the future, but as you say, it does raise an awful lot of questions. Justin, thank you very much indeed for joining me today. Justin Bronk there. And we end with our Insight Bite, a little something we feel that you should know. So let's take you to North Korea, where state television is reporting serious flooding. It's a country often referred to as secretive. Very few pictures emerge of life for ordinary people. But the situation is so bad, it's made a very rare admission that there are problems and made a public appeal for help. Aid agencies have confirmed the severity of the situation. Analysts say it's still not clear if the public message is designed to bring outside help or to try to reassure the people that it's taking action. And that's all for now. I'm Shuli Ghosh, and that was Insight.